don't know. But to the extent that audiences enjoy that nostalgia, I think it's a good and healthy thing as long as it's mixed with other material. But the comparison with the BSO that you make raises a point, I think, Chris, and that is that the BSO, the sense of if not modernity, if that's not the right word, of being contemporary, I think is enhanced by the fact that the orchestra plays the best of what's new. And in the classic repertoire, the music that they play, I mean, Mozart, for example, the greatest music ever written, whatever it is, Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, and so on, is as fresh and I mean, that is the mark of its greatness. The fact that you hear the world's greatest music, it's as fresh now as it will be 100 years from now. In pop or any pop music, there's a question of fashion, fad, immediate success, the short-term value, which is different than the longer, more solid values of the BSO, are part of what pops is about. So that it may have a decade stamped on it, or which is in the history of music nothing, or a year stamped on it, in a way that the symphony may not. That's part of it. The other big part of it is what's happened in popular music in the last 20 years. The great revolution that's taken us away from the kind of music we had in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, which was so suitable to orchestral presentation. I think those three things, that combined with the social aspect of pops, which has a lot to do with nostalgia, those three elements coming together might give you the impression that you, I think, in part correctly perceive.
I'm thinking there was one thing we did a piece on orchestras struggling this past winter with the Maxwell Davis Symphony No. 2, which was it's a long story, but it was, I thought, a heroic commitment by Seiji and the orchestra to wrestling this incredible monster to the ground. But they did it, and amazingly enough, the audience kind of bore with them.
It's a great piece. It's a great work.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
But it's hard to imagine in the current pops what would be like that. But let me just ask you, if you could sort of leap with the pops into some orchestral treatment of some very contemporary pop things, where would you go? What would you try?
I'm not just sure, but I think we could, and we perhaps should do that. And I think that the first practical question that it would raise is how we change the schedule so that we could do it. If we did something that would require the hours of preparation that the Maxwell Davies Symphony did, we wouldn't be able to do it on one or two performances, Chris. We'd have to change the idea of how pops works. We might have to have 3 or 4 rehearsals if it was a long, difficult, and partly experimental thing. The practicalities would then demand that we perform the thing 5 nights, 6 nights, 2 weeks perhaps, and that's something that we've talked about. I've been thinking about, if not specific projects, the idea of doing just this thing, of finding some projects that would be to some degree experimental, that would take more time in preparation to wrestle with it, I think is a word you used, and we would have to do that too. But then have it understood and organized that in such a way that we could present it enough times to the public, maybe a full week, that it would make some sense.
But give me an idea of what kind of thing it would be. Would it be jazz? Would it be electronic music? Would it be
yes to both?
Rock?
Yes to all three, I think. I mean, we could just to take something out of a hat. A local artist, Gary Burton, terrific, very important artist, I think. I don't know if he's ever done anything with orchestra, but Gary Burton, that kind of an artist, coming together with orchestra in either a new work by him or something written for him. I've talked about Keith Emerson before as an example of a pop artist who might be able to cross into this area and function well and not be inhibited. The pops is not the kind of format that one could make an experimental workshop out of it, nor I think should we. But to the degree that we can do it, and to the degree that the schedule may be altered so that it would be workable, I think it's something that should be tried.
George Benson played with the Pops.
Yes, he did.
You know,
Yeah, one night.
Could Bruce Springsteen play with the Pops?
I think so.
How would you do it?
I'm not sure, but I think it would work. I was concerned about George Benson, but it worked beautifully. And he'd never performed with the orchestrations that we accompanied with him. He'd never even heard before rehearsal. But his group was well prepared, and they were very professional, and it worked, I think, very well. My regret about George Benson was the fact that he did one night at Pops. It would be wonderful to present him for a whole week, I think.
Could you imagine pushing the orchestra in the direction of being an experimental orchestra?
To a degree, Chris. I think there may be 20%, 30%, maybe as much. No, I think 40 would be too much. There's a percentage of time that we could give to experimentation, I think.
Is there what's the resistance to
That would not upset what is a very solid and loyal public.
What's the resistance to doing more experimentation, doing more new things?
I don't think there is any, except time of preparation.
Is it?
And I think that can be gotten around along the lines that we talked about a moment ago. I think one can get around that.
Do your contract discussions have to do with defining that kind of direction for the orchestra?
No, I don't think they will, Chris, no.
I wanted to ask you, in terms of your own composing, Duke Ellington kept his orchestra together, I think, sometimes, really in the later years when it was barely economic, but he used to say because it was in effect it was his instrument in a certain sense, it was his toy, and it was the thing he played his ideas on every night. Does this orchestra work that way at all for you? Is this in any sense, does it affect your thinking, your writing, your compositional self?
Not in the way that Ellington talks about. That was a very personal, private, idiosyncratic band. Duke's thumbprint seemed to be on everything, and the band kind of had a sound in the way that he played his piano. I think, on the other hand, any conducting that I would do with any orchestra, any musical performing that I do, has some effect, I think, on my writing. It's an unconscious kind of effect. I don't think it's anything that I could predict or really even articulate very well, but certainly there is an effect. But the kind of relationship that Duke had with his band, I don't think time would permit me to have with the orchestra. It would take too long to write pieces and continually perform them. If I could write one piece a year for the Pops, or two pieces a year, Chris, I think this would be, I think that would be doing very well, given everything else I have to do, films and so on. I also think that I've said this before, that if we could produce one good work every year out of the batch of things that we get in, that we try, we will have done very well. Good new music is that hard to come by. It's not easy to find. Really one is asking to mine a diamond when you look for something that's going to really stick into the repertory. Last year I wrote an overture. This year I wrote a march that I had promised to write for Arthur Fiedler. Both light, short pieces, suitable for Pops. And for my own writing, if I can contribute a piece now and then for the orchestra, I want to. But I don't want to use it as a forum for my own personal music. I haven't played very much of my film music this year in Pop concerts at all, because I haven't wanted it to appear that I was using the Post as a self-serving thing where my composing activities were concerned. I don't view that as...
My sense is that people would welcome that in the orchestra and out. They would love to have you sort of speak through it. I don't know about a la Ellington, but...
Well, perhaps, I mean, the first year I played more of my music than I have this year. This year I've underplayed that role quite a bit. Some people have been criticized for playing too much of my own music, and some people are disappointed that I haven't played enough of it. So it works a little bit both ways. The part that I've taken seriously, though, is at the end of a lot of concerts, some little tots come in wanting autographs, and they always say, "Why don't you play Star Wars?"
That's what my kids say, "Daddy, is he going to play Star Wars?"
Every concert, you know, and that's nice.
Summing up, I think I had the intuition or the impression coming over here that that the Williams era might be over already or coming to an end. I get a sense, talking to you, that you really do want to stay.
Well, I don't want to give any impression that I'm not very serious about the Pops, Chris. As I mentioned to you earlier in this talk, that I'm serious about my own connection with it and whatever time I spend with it, and I have a view of it that is, again, from this musicological point of view, that is serious, even though it's a light, entertaining thing. And we'll work out what my role is going to be, probably this fall, with Tom Morris and the management of the symphony and so on. And we'll be talking about schedules and things that I'd like to try to do. So I think the appropriate time really to talk about how long I'll be here and so on would be later in the year, probably around Christmas, when I'll be back to do some Christmas programs. By then we will have sorted out things, and we'll see what I can do. I want to do as much as I can, as well as I can, and at this point I would just want to say that I'm very happy with the results of the second season, from the point of view of public response, and for me privately, even more importantly, from a musical point of view, the satisfaction that I've gotten this year from a lot of the things that we've done, and from the standard of the orchestra's playing. We've had a very good time.
Just finally, there's a mystery here that's eluding me. Given that, is there any doubt that you'll be back? Why should there be any doubt?
I don't think there would be anything that I could say just now, Chris. I don't see the Pops as being a problem where the schedule is concerned, where my film work is concerned. It's not terribly difficult being in Boston, even though my life is centered in Los Angeles and in London. So that I think that whatever problems it's causing are minor ones, really. In my personal life, problems is really even too big a word. It's too strong a word, I think. So we've had a very good time, and we're going to talk seriously about the future, and we'll be telling the orchestra. The orchestra's they've been very warm and friendly about this whole idea, and that's very important to me. So I'm going to see them in Tanglewood, and we won't be talking about the schedule at that time, but we will talk about it in December. So I think that's probably going to be the first time that I would want to say anything publicly about how long I can stay.
I will ask you again. I don't
Good.
know anybody who doesn't hope very much that you'll be back.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You probably get tired of people here.
season. Let's finish what we're doing.
Um, I've got to re-ask these questions, and I got to let these guys go. It won't take long. Sorry?
1 minute is
Wow.
I don't want to talk about it.
What's the hard part? What's the pain? What's the burden? And what are the pleasures?
Do you want me to talk?
No. Going to do. My sense is the musicians in town are crazy about you. The wider public is getting to like you very much. What can you tell them about how long you'll be here, whether you'll be here in 5 years, 10 years? I think you could get the impression that the Pops is in need of a radical modernization, that it is less modern now in the spring season than the BSO is during the winter. Tell us a little bit about your work in progress for the movies. Bob.
Enough, James?
Yes, I think so. Okay. Chris, re-ask your last question.
Tell us a little bit about your work in progress for the movies.
I'm sorry, do it again.
Tell us a little bit about your work in progress for the movies.